What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to a brand new video. My name is Jalil and I do real estate investing in New York City and some other places as well. And in today's video, I want to talk about how I purchased my first rental property. I did a video about this roughly 5 years ago, but I think I left a lot of information out. At the time, I was really just trying to document the process. I wasn't thinking with a YouTuber mind frame and what questions that will probably be asked or I need to answer. So I want to do a refresh to give you as much information as possible. I want to talk about what I purchased, where I purchased, what the numbers were. I want to talk about the hurdles I faced and how's it going now. That way, if you're someone who's thinking about getting into real estate investing or you're in the process already, you have an idea of what to expect and how to be successful. So let's jump right into it. In the beginning, I really did not have this big goal of being some large real estate investor. It just so happened that after I purchased my first property, I ended up buying multiple properties after that. However, the goal was really just to get one property at the time. I wasn't thinking about, I'm going to buy this property, and that property. Initially, I was just thinking about getting one property. And really, if I'm being fully transparent with you, I'll never forget it. I was actually in Walmart during the time. This is almost 10 years ago, and I was buying a blow-up mattress because I had to move again, and I was buying the compressor to put the air in the mattress, and I had about 2 other items with me. Now, when you're checking out a Walmart, I don't know how it is in other states, but in New York at the time, you had to show someone your receipt so they could verify essentially that you're not stealing, right? That the items on the receipt matched what's inside your hand. So the person who was checking my receipt was this elderly white man who happened to be, he looked maybe like 80, 90 years old. Now, I have no idea his backstory, right? But I made up a story in my head saying that, I don't know why he's here and he shouldn't have to be here. But I was kind of like projecting because I was thinking about myself and what I was going through at the time. He could have just been wanting to get away from his wife and his kids or wanted a part-time job for whatever reason because he was bored. But I told myself that I don't want to be doing that or have to do that when I'm 80, 90 years old. So I need to get serious with what's my retirement going to be, because I was already thinking about real estate, but it was kind of in the back of my mind because you kind of almost don't think it's possible when you don't have the information and you're like, it'll be nice to do, but I don't really know. So that was the motivation for me to go home that day and really try to figure it out. I was like, you know what? I don't want to depend on some retirement account. I don't want to depend on some job that could fire you or lay you off anytime they want. I don't want to depend on a company that could possibly go under and go bankrupt and I not have Social Security or a pension or something like that. I want something that I could control. Something that if I do all the right steps, that it pans out in my favor in the end, and something that I have more control over. So that was the real motivation behind getting my first rental property. I wanted something that could bring me passive income if everything goes right, and 30 years down the line, by the time before I'm 60, I'll have something coming in every month and I won't be forced to do something that I don't necessarily want to do. I gave you the why and as far as the motivation why I wanted to purchase a rental property, but I didn't tell you what a rental property exactly is. A rental property is any space. It doesn't have to be a home. It could be a single family home, a duplex, a triplex, a quad. It could be a warehouse. It could be a piece of land. Whatever space someone has that they are renting out to someone else for whatever use, right? So it could be the apartment building and there's 100 apartments in there. That's the apartment building is a rental property, right? And someone owns that and they rent out all the apartments in there. It could be a single family home in Georgia and someone owns it, but they rent out this 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It could be the Home Depot down the block, right? Home Depot rents out that space, but somebody might own that strip plaza. So a rental property is essentially whatever space you use, whatever space you have that you let someone else use for a certain amount of money. Now, I didn't know anything about real estate during that time. The only thing I knew was that, okay, I want to buy a rental property, and what makes sense is to buy close to home. So I would look like 2 hours roughly out from where I lived. So I was looking in CT, PA, New Jersey. I was looking almost everywhere except New York because the numbers in New York just kind of just like, it threw you off. It was like everything was just so expensive. You almost didn't think it was possible. So I was just like, okay, let me go somewhere cheaper and find something else that could possibly work because I don't have 20% of $800,000 to buy this rental property. So what else could I do? And CT and PA looked a lot more attractive numbers wise, even though I knew nothing about those states. So I said, let me look over there instead. And during the same time, I was moving, as I mentioned before, that's the whole reason I was getting the blow-up mattress. And I was talking to real estate agents because I needed to find a new apartment. I was talking to landlords trying to, rent their apartment from them. And I met a lot of people, agents, owners, landlords, who was giving me information regarding buying a property and buying or renting an apartment. And then I realized I didn't necessarily have to leave the state. They informed me about programs and first-time homebuyer programs and putting little to no money down, which I'm going to explain in the future. Don't worry, I'm gonna put you on. But that let me know I don't have to actually go to PA or CT to buy property. I could possibly get something still in New York. So that's what I started doing. I started just looking basically in the state, not knowing how I'm going to pay for it. But they gave me the confidence because they had the information and they did it already to let me know, okay, it's possible. I could stay here. Let's talk about how I actually found the deal. So as I mentioned before, I was looking for a new apartment because I had to leave my old apartment. Now, the agent that helped me find this apartment actually started coaching me on how to buy my own property. They started giving me information about first-time homebuyer programs, buying with little to no money down, what I should look for, things like that. And that's how that matched with my mindset of buying a rental property worked out perfectly. So they started sending me listings as far as what I could buy, what I should look for, and they were sending me listings all over New York City, and I was open to pretty much anything. My whole thing was I just want a decent location and I want the numbers to work. So, but in the back of my mind, if I'm being honest, I really wanted Brooklyn. I wanted a brownstone in Brooklyn. I wanted a 3-family or a 4-family in Brooklyn, preferably a 4-family. I would settle for a 3-family, and that was the goal. So I was really focused on Brooklyn, but it was tough because the program I was using, which was no down payment, it didn't match up to the competition at the time, so I was having a hard time getting my offer accepted. And my agent sent me a property in Queens, New York. Speaking of New York ambiance. My agent at the time sent me a few properties in New York, and not everything panned out. But they sent me this property in New York, which was in Queens, and I said, you know what? It's not bad. It's not in the best neighborhood, but I'll go check it out. And when I went to check it out, there was already, it's still competition. It wasn't as bad as 2020 and 2021, but there was competition there. And the numbers made sense. I wasn't in love with the area, but I was in love with the potential of the area. What I really liked was the numbers. The numbers were great. Like, the numbers showed, oh, this could definitely work. So, I was like, all right, I'm gonna put an offer in on this one. All right, let's back up a little bit because I realized I didn't tell you much about the property itself. I did tell you that it is located in Queens, New York. However, it's a 3-family property. So my main thing was I wanted either a 3-family or a 4-family. I was really trying to get the 4-family, but I was settled for the 3-family. And a 3-family basically means that there are 3 apartments in one home. So 3 separate apartments. So you could have 3 tenants in one home. And in this property, it had 9 bedrooms and 6 baths. That's because each apartment had 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. So, I thought the numbers made sense even back then. So I was like, okay, this could work. I'm going to submit an offer on it. So let's talk numbers, right? They wanted $700,000 for this property. And I said, you know what, even at $700,000, it still works, so I want to submit an offer. I knew I had to come with a strong offer because, once again, I didn't have the best, not the best. I wasn't putting any money down. I bought this property with no money down, right? And because I'm not putting any money down, when you're submitting an offer, the agent on the other side, they see that. So it's not the most attractive. So because of that, I have to have like a strong offer in the sense of, let's say they're asking for $500,000, but I offer $520, $530, because I know I'm not putting any money down. So I need to make it attractive in another way so that the seller's willing to accept my offer over anyone else that's putting 15, 20% down. When I went to go look at this property, it wasn't in the best shape, but you could tell that the owner did their best to take care of it. It wasn't like, okay, it's perfect, you just move in, it's ready. But it was in decent shape. And I got to meet, I think I met some of the tenants during that time. I definitely remember meeting one of the tenants who gave me the most headache. I'm going to talk about it in a couple of minutes, but I got a grasp, and it was like a crash course, because remember, at the time, I don't own anything. I don't know anything about real estate investing. I'm just like, this is just all brand new to me. I'm just figuring it out as I go along. So I saw the property, and they wanted $700,000 at the time. And I was like, you know what? Even at this price, the numbers still work. So I was like, let's submit an offer on it. And yeah, that's what we did. The problem was, though, that I was using a first-time homebuyer program that didn't require me to put any money down. No down payment, no closing costs. And because of that, some sellers are a little bit worried because they're like, you know what? It's not that attractive. They don't feel that secure knowing that you're not putting any money down. So I was like, I'm going to offer a little bit more than $700,000 just so you know I'm serious and that they feel a little bit more comfortable with me. So I think I offered $715, maybe even $720. And I just kind of crossed my fingers like, I hope they accept, because at this point, I was searching for maybe about 4 or 5 months, which doesn't seem long now in today's market because some people be searching for years. But at that time, it felt like an eternity, and I saw so many properties. And it wasn't that I wasn't putting offers on any of them. It's just that I was getting told no or not getting answered at all. So I submitted offers for $700,000. There was no down payment, no closing costs. Now the loan that I was using to get this property with no down payment, no closing cost is a loan called NACA. NACA is nationwide. It's not just New York. So wherever you are in the U.S., you could pretty much use NACA if you are a first-time home buyer. And that allowed me the flexibility to not have to put money down, which who's not gonna love that, especially if you don't have the money to put down anyway. The one thing I was doing, because as I mentioned, I was already thinking about real estate before those moments. I was practicing a lot. So this is 2016, right? 2016, I'm looking for this property. And I would be on Bigger Pockets every single day, whether reading the forums or listening to the podcast. At the time, you didn't really have as much information on social media about investing in stocks and real estate as you do now. EYL wasn't really a thing. I don't know when their first podcast came out, but Bigger Pockets was really occupying that space of real estate investing and the information. I listened to every single podcast, and I learned how to run the numbers just by listening to those podcasts and just like practicing every day. And that $700,000, that property with 3 apartments in it, it penciled out, it worked. So the mortgage amount would have been $3,450 or so at $700,000, and that's with no down payment, no closing costs, no nothing. So I was like, okay, this makes sense. And at the time, I don't know what his mortgage was, the person who owned the property who sold it to me, but he had 3 tenants in there. And the first tenant was paying $1,500, the second tenant was paying $1,800, and the last tenant was also paying $1,800. So what's that? So that's $36, $46, $5,100. Now I don't know what their mortgage is, so I don't know how much it was cash flowing, but I knew that 51 versus 35, the numbers make sense. I wasn't really thinking all the way through with a few things because once again, it's a first-time homebuyer program, which means you have to live there for a certain period of time or for the life of the loan, meaning you're not going to get that full 51 if you're occupying one of the units. You'll get 2 out of 3, right? So you maybe get to the 1,800 and 1,800, or you get 1,500 and 1,800. Now, I knew that even with me taking a unit, the numbers still made sense because I'm paying rent now where I live. I was paying $1,400 there. So even if I occupied one of the units, I would essentially be saving almost $1,000 plus every month because I don't have to pay rent anymore. Or I'm paying rent to myself essentially. So I was like, okay, the numbers still work. I want to submit an offer on this. And that's a breakdown of how the numbers work. Purchase price was $700,000. And the mortgage with the taxes and insurance and everything will come out to about $3,500. And the units were $1,800, $1,500, and $1,800. Let's talk about some of the challenges though, because it wasn't that simple. It wasn't, you put an offer in, they accept it, and now you're a homeowner. Congratulations. No, I wish. There were some challenges, and the main challenge was actually the price. Remember, they wanted $700,000. Now, because I wasn't putting any money down for the loan, the bank is they're just a little bit more strict when it comes to like their underwriting, meaning to make sure that you can actually afford the property. And when you're applying for a loan and you're getting a mortgage for a property, the bank does what's called an appraisal. They go out and they see that the value of the home, the asset that you're buying, is actually worth the amount that you're paying. They do this because they want to make sure that they're watching their risk. They want to make sure that if they're giving you a loan for this amount of money, that the house is actually worth whatever it is that you're paying. In my case, they need to verify that this house is worth $700,000. So what they'll do is they'll see in the last 6 months in that neighborhood what other homes similar to the one that I'm buying sold for that amount. Meaning similar 3 families, they had a similar number of bedrooms and bathrooms, similar square footage, and what they came back with is that it's not worth $700,000. In fact, they said it was worth $630,000. Now at this time, as a first-time home buyer, I'm thinking, oh, this is perfect. This is great because $70,000 less. But my agent did not feel the same way. 2 reasons. One, probably didn't feel the same way because, they get paid by commission, right? So me paying less affects their bottom line. But 2, if you have the experience, you realize that such a low appraisal, $70,000, could actually kill the deal, meaning that you don't get the house at all. Because the seller could be emotionally tied, like, okay, I know my house is worth $700,000, or I believe it's worth $700,000, and this guy's bank is only giving $630. No, let's walk away from the deal. Let's go to somebody else because there were other offers. However, I was fortunate enough that, you know, the seller is a Jamaican man, and I'm Jamaican as well, or Jamaican descent, but I claim it. And, you know, we met, and the vibe was cool. So that was part of the reason why he was still willing to accept me going forward with the deal, even though the appraisal came in so low. That, in combination with the fact that he had to sell now because he was buying another property and he wanted to roll over the money from this property into that property using what they call a 1031. We don't have to get into the weeds of that. I'll explain that later if you want to. Just let me know. But he needed to sell, so that in combination with the fact that he felt kind of like a vibe with me, he was like, you know what, we'll do it for 630. And I was like, whoo, perfect. So that was one of the main issues, the purchase price. The second major issue was some renovations that, you know, the inspector missed. Maybe about a month in, I had a skylight that was leaking a ton of water on the staircase. So I didn't really know anything about renovations, contractors, how to fix anything. So I just kind of called somebody up and said, hey, can you fix this? And they came out and they did a poor job, by the way, absolute poor job. And they fixed a skylight. They really just like kind of sealed it. And they overcharged me by a ton of money, which I know now, but at the time I didn't know any better. So, you know, if I knew, I probably would have did it the same way, because usually what happens in those cases is if you find a default during your inspection period, you could probably negotiate like, hey, can I get some money off because I got to fix this? However, in my case, remember the appraisal came in $70,000 less. So it would have been kind of even more difficult for me to ask for more money off, knowing that I already got like a steep discount and it cash flowed at $700,000. So I wouldn't have changed anything in that sense. Otherwise, everything else was kind of smooth renovation-wise. The skylight, there's things that popped up here and there with due time, but overall, the skylight was the main issue that happened as soon as I moved in. And last but not least, one of the main challenges was I had a horrible tenant. I mean, once I moved in, one of the tenants I decided to keep, they paid the first 2 months that I took ownership of the property, and they did not pay after that. And that was the journey of going 5 years without a tenant paying me a single dime. 5 years, absolutely no income from that unit, and just a ton of headaches. So those are the three main things I would say. Like, that was like a struggle when it came to buy my first rental property. But obviously I'm still here, I'm talking about it. So like, how are things going now? Well, you know, renovations are pretty much on autopilot now. I got a handle of it, right? So I know what's coming up. I keep track of what needs to be done every year, whether like the boilers or the windows, just to maintain the property, to make sure that's in good standard, and that you don't have like any major surprises, and you put money aside. Because when I first bought the property, I actually wasn't really putting much money aside. You know, you have this influx of income coming in that you, or put it this way, your money's not going out as fast as it would because you don't have the same expenses, right? So picture you're getting $500 extra cash flow that you weren't prepared for, or that you just didn't have any use for, you didn't need it. So every month I'm buying new sneakers, I'm taking trips, I'm going to Louisiana, I'm going to Miami, you know, because I had this extra income coming in and I didn't have the discipline. I should have been saving it. I should have been putting it aside for a rainy day, which did happen because that tenant didn't pay me in 5 years. But that's something that I would definitely do differently. I would stay focused in the immediate time, right? You'll have some fun later on, especially when my goal was to think long term. But, you know, you see the money coming in, you're like, oh, let's go. The mortgage is paid and there's still extra left on? Yeah, let's spend it. No, but as far as now, property's up to speed. That tenant that didn't pay me 5 years, they're gone. I got better tenants now. That was cool. And I would definitely buy it again. I would buy that same property again today. That property, our first property, is my absolute baby. Like, it is the gold mine. It is the gold, what is it? The chicken that laid the gold egg? Because I use that property to leverage to buy more properties in the future. That is the hub. That is number one. That sets the tone for everything else. That property going right the first time, let me have the confidence to say, all right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. The value going up over time allowed me the ability and the resources to say, okay, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to invest in that. So I would definitely do it again. What I wish I knew before starting, there's a few things. I wish I knew, because, you know what, let me start with what I'm glad I did know, because we have to acknowledge that, right? There's certain things that you did know that allowed you to be in a position, And I want to acknowledge that first. I am glad that I knew how to run numbers because that allowed me to buy the right property at the right time. My agent was sending me properties, but I was saying no to quite a few of them because they weren't deals. At least in my mind, I was looking at them and I was like, hey, these numbers don't pencil out, so no, 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 no. That one could work. No, no, no. And that's because I was just on these sites and I was just practicing how to run numbers, how to analyze numbers, what expenses I may have, what besides the mortgage, right? So I'm glad that I did that. The things that I wish I knew was more so how to deal with tenants, because you realize when you own rental properties, it's more so that it is a people business, not necessarily a numbers business. The numbers are important, right? You have to know your numbers, income, expenses, simple. But it's very much a people business, and you have to realize that you are renting someone's home. They live there. There's an emotional attachment there. So how you deal with things can't be so transactional. There has to be some type of empathy there. And I had it, but I might have had too much, right? Which is why I had a tenant not pay me in 5 years, because I didn't act quick enough. So you have to find the balance between running a business and also being empathetic towards somebody who is living in their home, although it is your property. I really hoped I answered as much questions as possible. At least that's what I could think of that, you know, someone may want to ask about the journey about buying my first rental property. And I hope this helped answer any questions you may have as well, whether that's buying in New York, whether what programs you can use, because you know there's other programs besides NACA that I use. There's Queens Housing Partnership, there's Long Island Housing Partnership. You know, FHA is not a first-time home buyer program, but people use it as such because it's a 3.5% down. There's conventional loans that offer 5 and 10% down. It really depends on your situation, what you need, where to buy, what to avoid, mistakes I made, the challenges, all of those things. I really hope that helped. And good luck to you on your journey if you are thinking about buying a rental property as well. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Peace out. Real quick, I just got another idea. So if you are thinking about buying a rental property and you're about to start your journey, but you're still confused, or you're someone who rather read than just watch a video, just so you could have something to reference, I have an ebook. It's $1. $1. Cheapest I can make it. I used to sell for a lot more, but I want to give back to, you know, whoever's trying to get their journey started. It has a ton of information from attorneys, real estate agents, lenders, to how to analyze numbers, to closings. Everything you could think of is in this book. And it's over 60 pages, or about 60 pages, with some resources. That's a first-time homebuyer programs, where to get certain documents from. It's in the link in the bio. It's $1. And yeah, good luck. If you need it, go ahead. Check it out. All right. I'm really going this time.